Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video I'll explain how to write the discussion section. So the discussion section is considered as the most difficult to write. However, it doesn't have to be. It's usually the longest section in the manuscript. It ranges between 6 to 7 paragraphs. Sometimes it can be up to 10 or even 12 paragraphs depending on the reviewer comments. So you want the first paragraph to be an overview of the project. So you want to remind the readers what was your research question and as well as the answer based on your findings. I usually do not use citations here and I recommend you don't do as well. So paragraph 2 to 5, you want to compare with previous study. So you want a side study that have supported your findings or have the same findings as your findings. So let's say, for example, the most common complication in your study was complication A. And other previous study mentioned the same complication as the most common one. So you want to say that in our study we found this was the most common complication, and those other previous study mentioned the same thing. You also want to contrast with previous study. So you want to see studies that have had different conclusion than the one you had, like I showed in the introduction video. So to see how your findings are different from other researchers or previous studies. Also, sometimes you may like to add interpretation of your results. So why do you think you had this result and what are the factors that influenced it in comparison with previous studies? So by the end of the discussion section, you will have a section called the limitation section. Sometimes you can add the limitations and strength. And here you mention why your paper is not perfect, like all papers. So any mistakes, whether methodological mistake or something that you think is a flaw within your study, you can mention it there to highlight this as a limitation. And sometimes a reviewer would tell you that this is wrong or this is might not be correct, so you can include it within the limitation section. So by the end of the discussion, you would have the conclusion section, and the conclusion section is simply an answer of your research question without numbers or without percentages. So for example, if you're assessing awareness, you would say in the conclusion the awareness was high or it was low. If you're assessing the prevalence of something, you would say it was very common, it's very prevalent, or if it's not, and so on. So I usually, when I work with different research teams, I like to use this template. So here it's the same thing that I mentioned, the answer of the research question, comparison with previous work, interpretation of the results, the strength and limitation. Then you would talk about the conclusion and significance. Yes. So let me show you an example of a discussion section that I wrote. Okay, let's see. So I think it was approximately 7 paragraphs. I don't recall. So if you can see here, I've given a summary of the study, and this is the aim of the study, and this is simply an answer of the research question, but in a little bit more detail. So then I went to see what are the study that have similar findings to our study. Similar to the study outcome, several studies have demonstrated positive attitude, and then you reference them here. Then I've gave some interpretation. This might be due to this, and so you would do the same thing across different paragraphs. And again, if you refer back to the outlines and the introduction section, you want to have an outline here as well. So each paragraph I can summarize into one idea to make it more clear. So let's go to the limitation section or subsection. Here you would mention several limitations or all the limitations that you can think of. So here we use a self-administrated web-based survey. So instead of distributing the survey in person, we used an electronic survey as well. The response rate was not high as well. This is considered as another limitation. This study was conducted in one university. However, we try to minimize this by including 2 campuses. And we also, it was a cross-sectional study and it was done in one point in time. So instead of having a study conducted at several points in time, it was only conducted once. These are all considered limitation. However, if you look back into a previous study from the literature, you can see what are the limitations that they did and how you can minimize them yourself. And it's completely okay that you would have limitation within your papers. So do not worry about making a mistake. Just try to work really well on the literature review to have a strong methodology. And here you can see the conclusion. So in conclusion, the student showed a positive attitude toward conducting medical research. That's mainly it. Yes, something else that you would like to add in your conclusion section that I forgot to mention is most times when you're finishing an article, you want to add what are the questions that you have, because every research project that you come up with or you're done with would typically add more question to the So here we mentioned that further studies are out to investigate if medical students pursue research activity after college, their attitude and influential factors, as well as to investigate the research skills and how they acquire them. So this is to help readers who are doing a literature review to come up with their own idea and to help them establish or work on new project in the future. So I hope this is clear, and best of luck.